Hello and welcome to another edition of the Jumps Racing Podcast in association with horseracing.net. As always, myself and Nick are here to review what we saw over the weekend, look ahead to what we're going to be seeing this weekend, and we had a little bit of interaction on the last episode, and we'll be reading out a few of your comments. Don't forget to visit allthews.horseracing.net/Cheltenham Festival for a free ticket giveaway, or keep your eyes peeled on our Twitter feed for details at horseracing_racing.net. So do keep an eye out for that free ticket giveaway. As always, it's hosted by myself, Bobby Beavers, and I am delighted to be joined by Mr. Nick Seddon. Nick, great to see you. Really looking forward to this episode because we mentioned last week about the interaction with the people who are watching this on YouTube, and also the people that have been subscribing as well on your SoundClouds, on your Apple Music, on your Spotify as well. And we've asked for interaction, and we certainly have.
Yeah, hiya, Bobby. Good evening, as always. As you say, yeah, it's nice to see a little community building now around the Jumps Racing podcast. If you are watching, I am pretty much drinking from sacrilege as far as the Jumps Racing podcast is concerned, because I've got the all-weather performer General Tufto on my mug. But a pleasure as always to be on. Loads of interaction about this debate around the 5-day Cheltenham Festival. We'll read out some of the thoughts and opinions and build on it as well. So plenty to talk about, and a really, really good weekend of action we've just seen as well.
Yeah, we have, and of course, a great weekend coming up as well with what we're going to be seeing at Cheltenham. And not forgetting as well, it's Doncaster's biggest jumps meeting on Saturday, also with the Skybet Chase meeting. Right, let's have a look back at what we saw over the weekend, and we'll start first with Ascot. Goshen, wow. Undefeated over the hurdles. And I really am taking a huge shine to this horse,
Yeah, it's hard not to, really, isn't it? Because, I mean, he's made 3 starts now over hurdles since suddenly clicking into place for the Gary Moore team. And he's won all 3 by obscene distances, 23 lengths, 34 lengths and 11 lengths. The latest was the shortest winning margin so far, but he still absolutely bolted up. And really, on the back of this, you've got to take him seriously as far as the Triumph Hurdle is concerned. He was shortened in ever so slightly from 8 to 1, to 7 to 1, which makes him joint second favourite behind Aspire Tower, who's 6s. So it's wide open at the moment. I think that the one thing I will say about Goshen, however on earth I cannot pronounce horses' names properly, but he was very free, wasn't he? The way he runs with his races, he goes out from the front and he decimates the field. Now, that is absolutely fine, and he's been really impressive in the way he's done it. But all 3 of these have come in minor company. If he goes straight to the Triumph, he would be stepping straight into a Grade 1 race. So that's going to ask a whole different question of him.
Different ball game.
Absolutely different ball game. But Pentland Hills showed it's possible last year. He did a similar thing. He stepped straight into Grade 1 company, went on to become a dual Grade 1 winner, and is now the second favourite for the Champion Hurdle. So we know it's possible. The other concern with Goshen, which perhaps, when I say a concern, because normally when a horse wins 3 races like this, it would be more like 3 to 1 for the Triumph Hurdle, not 7s. But he's run once so far a left-handed track, which is what Cheltenham is. That was at Fontwell, and he jumped noticeably right throughout. That was on his debut. So if he's going to be running free and jumping right-handed, there's got to be a concern that the fizz is going to be taken out of him in a Grade 1 race like the Triumph, which probably explains why he's still around the 7 to 1 mark. But he's a free-going sort. He's clearly got a serious engine. And yeah, he's very much one to take seriously. But I will say at the moment, I don't know about you, Bobby, whether you've got a strong fancy in the Triumph. I very much think that All Mankind is the one to beat, and the one we saw at Doncaster as well, Navajo Pass, very much caught my eye too.
Yeah, and I agree with All Mankind. The skeleton horse, that would be the one that would definitely tick the boxes for me. And I think Dan's actually come out as well and said that horse is going to go straight to Cheltenham now. Is that right? So yeah, that one's the one to beat. But listen, Goshen, he has got a chance. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that he hasn't got a chance. But it'd be interesting to see the final feel for that. And I think it's one of them where when we know the final decks, that's when we can start eliminating them, if you like, working out where the pace is going to come from, etc., etc. Now, Magic of Light, she returned back to the winners in closing that Grade 2 mares herd. Of course, she had a cracker back in April, finishing second behind Tiger Roll, and now she's with a Grade 2 mares herd. Oh, great mare.
She is a brilliant mare, and you know what? There's so many great mares in training at the moment, isn't there? I mean, we were singing the praises last week of the three, or a couple of weeks ago, La Baga Ra, Lady Buttons, and Happy Diva, and just add Magical Light to the list. I mean, she ran an absolute blinder last year in the Grand National, and you know what? So far, I've been so impressed with her this season. This is her third start, and we say the same things when we talk about these national horses. And one phrase which gets said a lot is that, these horses are trained for the national, which means they're trained to peak in April. We said it about LeBroy last week, and I'm going to say it again against Magic of Light. You get the feeling that she's still building up to something here, because she needed the run on a reappearance. She then was a bit laboured, but got the job done in a listed mare's chase last time. And then on Saturday, she absolutely bolted up in a Grade 2 hurdle. Now, if she carries on in the progression that she is, I mean, she's going to be on a career high mark in the Grand National, compared to last year when she was off 151. But you cannot write her off. She clearly likes the fences. She likes to test the stamina. She's as game and genuine as they come. She could be one of the real number one challengers to Tiger Roll if he does take his chance, and hopefully he takes his chance in April.
She's similar to Lady Buttons, isn't she, Nick? Because it's like Lady Buttons can do it over fences, can do it over hurdles, and Magic of Light is exactly the same.
Very much so, yeah. It's really nice to see a versatile type, isn't it? Something about these mares, they seem to be able to jump between the two in the code that is really likable. But I mean, there's another one later that we'll talk about, a certain Lamy Surge. He's another that has shown form over both fences and hurdles. So yeah, it's nice when a horse can show that versatility. Thistlecrack's another, and hopefully she carries on running well and builds up to Aintree as anticipated.
Thomas Darby also was a winner on Saturday at Ascot as well. Of course, the thing we say with him is that it was a good idea to put him back over hurdles.
Yeah, it happens every year, doesn't it, that these hurdlers and novice hurdlers graduate into chasing and over the fences, and for some of them it's a real success. For others, it really isn't. I wouldn't go as far to say he was a total flop, Thomas Darby. He had a couple of solid enough efforts over fences. They decided to switch him back to hurdles, and he came here off top weight at Ascot and ran really, really well. Defied it to win the race, and I thought that was a really, really good performance. It's easy to forget that he was second in last year's Supreme Novices Hurdle. Now, this is a race that's produced a few glittering pieces of form in the last 10 years or so. You think back to Altior's renewal when he had an absolute host of Grade 1 winners behind him. This probably isn't the same sparkling renewal, in the Classical Dream has flopped and a few others. Itchy Feet hasn't quite gone on this year. But this was a really strong piece of form, and it's going to be interesting to see where he goes next, because he has an entry in the Champion Hurdle. Now, I think even in a year like this, where it is a wide open renewal of
he's going to be out of his depth.
You'd think so. I mean, he's entitled to take his chance. I'd say that much.
Of course. But he'll be out of his depth.
I think so. So, you think about handicaps, where they're going to place him. It's going to be really interesting. Are they thinking about a handicap at Cheltenham, or will they send him straight to Aintree, or perhaps maybe even chuck him in a Grade 1 at Aintree? It's going to be interesting to see what they do with him.
The big race of the day, what we saw, Defi Du Seuil taking on Undersell. With the greatest respect to the rest of the rivals, we said it was a two-horse race, but Defi Du Seuil, again, just absolutely phenomenal on the day. No surprise to see him now, the anti-post favourite for the Champion Chase. If Altior turns up as well for the race too, then we're going to be in for a cracker come Wednesday. It's Wednesday, isn't it, the Champion Chase?
It is, and you're absolutely right. I mean, we both said it was a two-horse race, and Defi Du Seuil proved us wrong, didn't he? Because it was a one-horse race. It was a top-class performance. I've made no secret about the fact that I've been sceptical all year about Defi Du Seuil in this discipline. But I tell you what, I made a comparison as well to Politolog. You know, I sort of said that he was maybe making hay while the sun was shining because Altior was away from the division and it felt really wide open. But I take it all back. I've been converted, proven wrong. He is now the one to beat in this division. That was a top class performance. It really was top draw to eye up a top class rival like Anderson. His legs maybe, you know, tiring a bit now as a 12-year-old, but he's still a multiple Grade 1 winner. And to just brush him away in the manner that he did was in the real hallmark of a top class horse. And now he goes to the Champion Chase very much as the one to beat. I mean, I've got the market in front of me here, and you know the key thing here is the fact that he's the only one that hasn't shown any chinks in his armour this year. So with that sense, I mean, Altior's going to run in the Game Spirit, you'd think, next month in February. If he wins that in convincing fashion, you'd imagine they'd be joint favourites and it'll be a real race to savour. But at the moment, you know, Defi Du Seuil 2-1, 7-4 deserves the place because Altior had his unbeaten run ended by surname. Chacun pour soi was beaten over Christmas. His conqueror at Plutarch is probably shown at his best form over further traditionally, and then the likes of Silas, Emery, and then Min have a little bit to prove in this sort of race. So for differing reasons. So it's going to be it's turning into a fascinating renewal this of the Champion Chase. Defi Du Seuil is very much the one to beat, but I think the interesting angle that I keep thinking about here, Bobby, is about Anderson. We talk every week about admirable veterans, and he's 12 now. And if you owned Anderson, how would you campaign him? Because he owes his connections absolutely nothing. Would you just let him carry on because he clearly enjoys his job, or would you think about retiring him soon?
Well, I think with a horse in general, they always say, don't they, with the older they get, they tell you when they've had enough. You know, you hear it trainers saying, look, he's not enjoying it anymore. He's telling us now he or she's had enough. And as you say, it's blatantly obvious he's still loving life. You know, the way he's running, he still loves the game. I know he's a 12-year-old. Why would you retire him when it's blatantly obvious that, yes, he is a 12-year-old? Does he run like a 12-year-old? No. I think he runs like he's a young guy. Don't get me wrong, he's no spring chicken. But he doesn't run like he's a 12-year-old horse, just like Faheen doesn't as well. So for me, no, I wouldn't retire Anderson because I think he will tell them when he's had enough. And it's blatantly obvious at the moment that he's still loving the game. He's loving life, and I would not retire him and send him to Cheltenham, get him in that Champion Chase, and just see what happens.
You'd be Champion Chase man over the Ryanair because he's brilliantly versatile, isn't he?
He is, but I think Champion Chase for me. And I should tell you why. Because should something happen, Willie Mullins has never won the Champion Chase.
Really?
Yes.
Yeah, I should know that.
Yeah, he's never won the Champion Chase. So
he's so all-conquering, isn't he, that you just assume he's won the absolute lot, don't you?
He won the Gold Cup, obviously, last year with Albert Photo. That was the first time he'd won that, but he's never won the Champion Chase either.
Well, there you go. You could have a few as well. You know, even a certain Duvan might be fit to
yes,
take.
Yeah.
So, could be the year.
Could be Willie's year if, obviously, depending on what happened with Defi Du Seuil and obviously Altior as well. But yeah, Willie Mullins has never won the Champion Chase.
Well, I mean, we can't write off Chacun pour soi either.
No, he's running this week, is he? Chacun pour soi, is that right?
I can certainly check.
Is it this weekend?
He's not running on Trials Day at Cheltenham, so he may be running over in Ireland. I'm just getting his profile up right now.
When's the Dublin Festival?
He's entered in on the 1st of Feb in the Dublin Chase.
So the weekend after, big Saturday. Yeah, week on Saturday. I know I've seen somewhere he was running. I was getting my weekends mistaken. Right then, let's have a look at what we saw at Haydock on Saturday. And I think we'll start first, Nick, with Sam Brown. Now, that was a very nice performance.
It was, and you know, I mentioned last week how much of an enjoyable card that I always find this, and I got to go on Saturday and mingle and speak to some of the winning trainers after, and really, really enjoyable card. You know, lots of informative things, and Sam Brown looks a real staying chaser in the making. Now, that might be an interesting statement to make for a horse that won over the trip of the Marsh or the JLT 2.5 miles. It was on heavy ground, and the further he went, the better he looked, because it was notable that this one made a few mistakes and wasn't travelling all the way around, but really the stamina started to kick in. And it was interesting as well after the race that Anthony Honeyball straight away said, we're looking at the staying races for him, RSA, but maybe even the National Hunt Chase. Whether he's good enough this year to win a race like that, I'm not sure. But either way, when he graduates next year into open company, he could be a real staying chase, a handicapper to follow.
The Supreme Trial went in the way of Stolen Silver for Nigel Twiston-Davies and his son Sam Twiston-Davies, which was a very good day at the office for both of these.
It was a very good day and a very dramatic day in the office for the Twiston-Davies pair, because Stolen Silver, to begin with, hit 1,000 to 1 in running on the Betfair exchange. I was near the winning post and I couldn't see him. Haydock's getting a real reputation or habit at the moment of having these really dramatic finishes. Stony Mountain came from the absolute clouds on Betfair Chase Day to win the hurdle there. We
were there, weren't we?
Yeah, there's been a few like that now, because Haydock's such a test, even on these minimum trips. When the going gets heavy, it becomes a real difficult thing for the ones in front to hang on. So you get a lot of the time ones coming from the clouds and taking it. And yeah, he flew home. I thought it was really interesting that Nigel Twiston-Davies said after that he was eyeing up the Betfair Chase. That is a tip in itself, because Nigel Twiston-Davies has won 3 of the last 6 renewals of the Betfair Hurdle, sorry, not the Betfair Chase. 3 of the last 6 renewals. It's an ultra competitive handicap hurdle at Newbury next month. And the interesting thing about that as well is becoming really, really popular for novice hurdlers to go to Betfair Hurdle en route to going to the Supreme. So maybe he can prove his credentials for the Supreme even further by doing well at Newbury.
Yeah, and you mentioned there about the Betfair Hurdle. Obviously, Nigel Twiston-Davies having a really good record in that. And the horse we're going to talk about now actually won it a couple of years ago for him, didn't he? In a certain Ballyandy, of course, also won the champion bumper at the festival as well. Now, he won the champion hurdle trial, which was great for Nigel and Sam, obviously, with it named after the new one, who just dominated that race for many, many years. And we'll be hearing very shortly from Nigel, but that was a great performance. I really liked what I saw in terms of that. And you know what? Champion hurdle, just go for it.
Yeah, definitely. I've been really chuffed to see Ballyandy run so well recently, because he's very much been a horse without a home over the last couple of seasons. We've said it before, when he lined up at Wetherby for the long distance hurdle and just didn't stay. But he's dropped back to 2 miles now, and he's been running brilliantly all season. A brilliant effort at Kempton over Christmas, and then he's come here, and he's won after hitting 699 in one on 699 to 1 in running on the exchange or something silly. He's relished the conditions. He's a real stayer at this kind of trip, 2 miles. And yeah, very likable. And the best thing about it was it very much felt like the new one performance. He showed a lot of heart at Haydock Park to win that race 4 times. There's a couple of times he got in a real scrap. Remember him fighting off Chibello one year from the Skelton team. So it was really, really nice to see Nigel Twiston-Davies win the race again. And yeah, why not? It's a wide open renewal of the champion hurdle. Ballyandy does have graded form. He's a Cheltenham Festival winner. He seems to be really coming back into himself form-wise. There may be a little bit more to squeeze out of him in that sense. So, yeah, I agree with you. As Nigel says in a minute, he's handicapped out of the handicaps now, you'd say. His weight's going to be too heavy. So, yeah, I'm all for it. Chuck him in the champion hurdle, see what happens.
Well, as it just said there, that he caught up with Nigel after Ballyandy won the champion hurdle trial. And here's what he had to say.
Nigel, brilliant day for you today. 3 winners at the time of recording, including 2 up here at Haydock.
No, good day, yeah, excellent.
And the main race, of course, for you was Ballyandy's win in the champion hurdle trial. Just got there in the dying strides.
He certainly did. He stays well, and no, that was excellent.
And it must be nice to have one win in a race named after the new one as well.
Well, exactly. It was very important for us that we won it. We didn't think we would, but we did. So it was a great day.
And he seemed to enjoy himself as well, parading before the race.
New one looked great, didn't he?
He did. And in terms of Ballyandy now, is the champion hurdle on the agenda?
Oh, certainly, yeah.
Yeah, rather than the handicaps?
Well, he'll be handicapped to everything now. So
okay, brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Cheers.
Nigel Twiston-Davies speaking to Nick there at Haydock on Saturday after Ballyandy's victory. Now, one horse that did really well also on Saturday was a certain Vintage Clouds, and that was in the Peter Marsh Chase. That's been won by some great horses in the past. Bristol de Meyer we'll be talking about very, very shortly. It will spring to mind. But Vintage Clouds, great performance. You know what's a shame about him, Nick, in all fairness, is how much he doesn't like Grand National fences.
Yeah, you're spot on there, Bobby. It's strange, really, for a horse in those colours to not like the national fence.
I know.
That's what they're bought for, really. Every Hemmings horse is bought with the Grand National in mind. And, you know, unfortunately, as Mike says, he fell at the first last year through no real fault of his own. He rather overjumped it, Mike described it as. And maybe he remembered it when he went to the Beecher Chase, because he just did not. I've never seen a horse dislike the fences more. I think he went through the chair rather than... He did,
ploughed through it.
Absolutely took half the chair with him. He really did. And, some horses just don't like the Grand National fences. That's why it's one of the most unique tests in racing. But that's not to mean that he's not a smart stayer. I mean, he's the type that, probably hasn't won as many races as his talent it said he should. But he is remarkably consistent. His record says that. He was second in the Ultima last season. He was third in the Scottish Grand National, fourth in the Welsh Grand National. He's always lurking on the right sort of mark. And he's finally it's all come together. He decimated the field on Saturday. And he's the type that always runs his race. He's bang in form at the moment. He'll probably go up 6 or 7 pounds. He'll still be competitively weighted. He's one of the most likeable chasers in training. It's just a shame that he's not an Aintree horse, but that doesn't mean... the world doesn't completely revolve around Aintree. There are plenty of brilliant chases out there. Mike says in the recording that the likes of the Scottish National, the Ultima, there's a handicap at Aintree. I think it's called the Red Rum that comes under consideration.
Red Rum Handicap Chase. It's what Double W's won a few years back. And the late, great Malcolm Jefferson.
Absolutely. And the Grand National Trial is another thing. And he even says it's cheating a little bit, because you win the Grand National Trial and don't go to the National. But it's 3.5 miles. It's a really big pot. He's at his favourite track, Haydock Park. If he turns up there, he's definitely one to consider on soft, heavy going, which it undoubtedly will be at Haydock. Yeah, so it's just a really likeable horse, and nice to see him get his nose in front. But interesting as well, because we managed to get a couple of words as well from Mike about some of the other Hemmings horses, because they do have some really smart chasers. And it's nice to hear that Lakeview Lad is on course for Aintree instead of Vintage Clouds. I thought he ran a really eye-catching race in the Roland Merrick on Boxing Day. He was third. He was staying on all the way to the line. As impressive that Tocqueville Ben was, you could really see that Lakeview Lad probably needed further that day. He's on about 155 at the moment, officially handicapped. So he's one to keep an eye on in terms of the Grand National. So all's not lost for Team Hemmings.
Let's hear from Mick now.
Mike, that was a terrific performance from Vintage Clouds. He seemed to relish the test today.
He was very good today, Nick. Jumped better than normal, I suppose. He always jumps well, but he was a bit exceptional today, and he didn't make his usual one mistake. And he got away a little bit down the back. Once he does that, he's hard to pass, He's good today.
And he is one that tends to always be there on the frame. He's super consistent. It must be nice to get a win like this.
It's great to win a big one with him, because he's been second and third in the Nationals and Cheltenham and places. He's never really won a recognised big race, and he has today, which is great. He's a smashing out horse, and he's a bit of a favourite now with everybody.
And you mentioned the National. He's had a couple of sticky outings over the National fences.
He won't go to National, Nick. He's we ran him in last year, and no fault of his own. He overjumped the first and fell. Whether he remembered it or what, I don't know, but he did not want to be there when we ran him in the Beecher, and he just didn't look happy and basically pulled up, so he won't go back there.
Back to the Ultima then this year at Cheltenham?
He could go to the Ultima. Possibly he could come back here in a month for the National Trial, which is cheating a little bit, but it's 3.5 round here, it's 100 grand. You'd say it would suit him, but possibly go to Cheltenham as well. There's that. The Cheltenham's an option. Scottish National later in the year is an option. There's a handicap. There is a handicap at Aintree is an option. All those decent handicaps are options for him. Yeah.
And while I have got you, we'll talk quickly about the Grand National. Have you got anything in mind for that? How's Lakeview Lad at the moment?
Lakeview Lad, his plan is to go to the National. He's in good form. Ran well last day at Wetherby. Probably have a run over her at the end of the month at Kelso. There's no real race that fits into his agenda between now and the weights come out anyway. He's high enough in the weights as he is, so he didn't want to go any higher, and he'd run probably Kelso over hers and then maybe go back to Kelso in one of those conditions races and then straight to Aintree. That's the plan anyway. Yeah. And
last but not least, looking ahead to next Saturday, I've spotted Cloth Cap has an entry in the Skybet Chase. Is he another one on the radar?
No, he won't run. This ground's too soft at the minute for him. Cloth Cap's probably one to keep an eye on later in the year maybe. Not sure whether he'll have an national entry or not. At the moment he wouldn't get in anyway. So.
Okay, bro. Thanks very much for chatting to me.
No worries.
Great for Nick to talk to Mick Meagher there. Great to have him here on the podcast. Now, last week, we brought up a topic which has been discussed throughout the whole of the racing world and community about Cheltenham possibly becoming a 5-day festival. And we asked you to get in contact with us and let us know your thoughts and opinions. So what I did is I went on my own personal Twitter account and I asked you basically, should Cheltenham be a 5-day festival? I ran the poll for 24 hours and this is the results. Yes, 9%, no, 91% of you said no, it should not happen. Now that, Nick, is quite a big gap, an astounding no, 91%.
Absolutely emphatic, isn't it? Really, really interesting to see that because, you listen to the debates going on and a lot of trainers are for the idea, and of course they will be. The industry seems to be for it because it makes commercial sense, but it's really interesting that the fans seem to be dead against it because perhaps it would dilute the spectacle and you can sort of understand their point, really.
Yeah, and I as I say, I'm on the fence with it. I said that last week. I said I am on the fence with it. But what I will do is I'm going to read out some reactions, what we saw on Twitter. And then, Nick, I know you saw some on Facebook as well. So this is from Anne. And Anne said, apart from diluting the racing, what about costs of another hotel night, another dinner? And then she puts brackets, tea to me and you, Bobby, snacks during the day, etc. A 5-day festival will most likely see me hang up my membership badge, to be honest. That's from Anne. Mel says the quality was diluted going to 4 days. It can only get worse going to 5. Rob says, depends what you want the festival to be. If it's a national hunt world championship to determine the best horse in each category, and for horse racing enthusiasts, then 3 days is enough. If it's for stag and hen parties with the sole purpose of making money, then 5 days is fine. And Steve says, from a racing point of view, no, the Saturday of Ascot is absolutely terrible. Nothing interesting there racing-wise. If they want to put a 5th day on for money, fine, but it should be kept to low-grade handicaps and maybe another bumper. Make the Mayor's Chase the feature. So that's a couple of responses we saw on Facebook.
More mixed, actually. There are people in here that were for it or against it. I mean, Jason was very much against it because he said, it's too diluted as it is, should be back at 3. That's a common theme. People don't, and we changed to 4 days in 2005, was it? Mm-hmm. That brought in a host of new races, and there was frustrations about that still linger. Hayley's another that said 3 days enough. Marie commented to say, as much as she loves to watch it, 4 days are more than enough, and it's long enough for some anyway. And then on the other hand, John commented to say, well, we might as well give it a trial. Money talks. It makes a lot of sense from a commercial perspective, and if we don't like it, it can just be a one-off. So that, I mean, that's an interesting point. And the other solution that a lot of people have said is, rather than make it a bona fide fifth day of 7 races where we'd have to find 5 or 6 to fill the void, we could go back to 5 days of 6 races, which means we'd only need 2 extras, which is what Sean has said, and make the Ryanair the main race on the Saturday, which would be the logical thing you'd think as a championship race anyway. So it's the sort of thing that I imagine, I sort of agree with John in that it's the sort of thing that will only be solved if we give it a go, really. I'm a bit like you, Bobby. I'm very much on the fence. I personally, I think 4 days is the way to go. I think it's fine as it is as 4 days, but it makes a lot of sense from an industry perspective. It would be nice to see the Cheltenham Festival have a prime time slot on the Saturday, taking on the football. I think it's more than capable of doing that. It would sell out. It's good for the game. It gives more chances to trainers and owners to have a winner at Cheltenham. As long as they think about logistical things like competing with the Midlands National, which I think is a great race in itself, I'm all for it. I don't see why not. But if you offered me to stay at 4, I would take that as well. So I'm sitting on the fence, really.
I'm going to say, I think there's a lot of people who's for it. There's also a lot of people who's against it at the same time as well. And I think it's just finding that right balance. Now, what we said just off air before we was recording this, we said we're going to try and find topics to talk about, didn't we? And get as much interaction as we can. And obviously, we said it'd be probably wise with the talking points at the moment. So obviously, the 5-day festival is the big talking point. Now, obviously, since we did last week's podcast and this week's podcast, it has been announced that Nick Rust, the chief executive of the BHA, will be stepping down at the end of 2020. So for this week's podcast, we want to know, and we want your thoughts and opinions as well, who should replace Nick Rust as the chief executive of the BHA. Now, you've got to think about this logically. You've got to think about it wisely, because this is one of the biggest jobs, if not the biggest job in horse racing. You can make a case for it is. There's a lot riding on this as well. It's going to be very stressful. It's going to be very challenging as well. And from all the people in racing you've seen, who do you think could tick the boxes and be the new chief executive of the BHA? And you may even say you may be aware of somebody outside of racing that could do this job. It's an interesting one, that, isn't it, Nick?
Very interesting. Yeah. While you were bringing in the top odds from Star Sports, and they're always interesting. These. I remember when the Racing Post editor position came up, and there was all kinds of names in here. But this is the sort of thing that is really, really interesting. I've seen a brilliant theory that it's Kevin Blake's job because he stepped down from the Final Furlong podcast, which means it's absolutely written that he's going to become the new BHA chairman. I think it's probably interesting. I mean, there's some interesting names in there. I mean, my old managing director from Timeform, Kieran Patman, is 22-1 apparently for the job. So
right,
it's very interesting. Nick Luck's 20s.
Yeah.
Ben Keith from Star Sports is 25. So I think they're to be taken with a pinch of salt, these odds. Whoever comes in will have a real job to carry on the good work of Nick Rust in doing the right things for racing. And hopefully the right person is put in charge. I'm sure they will. They got it right last time with Nick Rust. It's a shame to see him go, but I've the racing bloggers 1,000-1. I have every faith that and KJ as well as 1,000-1. There's some.
Are we there, by the way, Nick?
No, we're not there. No, Nicky Henderson's 250s. Ollie Bell's 100-1. Matt Chapman's 100-1. Barry Hearn and Claire Balding are the same price. There's some interesting names in here. Sean Boyce is 500s. AP McCoy 125-1.
Right.
Plenty of interesting names.
There certainly is indeed. So let us know your thoughts and opinions. And let's be honest, it's one of the biggest jobs in horse racing. Who is the right person to take over from Nick Russ? Let us know on Twitter. Let us know on Facebook as well. And don't just put so-and-so or so-and-so. Give a reason why you think that person is the right one to take over from Nick. Do let us know your thoughts and opinions. You've let us know about the 5-day festival. Who's the right person to take over from Nick Russ? And as always, like we did with this one with the 5-day festival, we will read it out next week as well. Right, then, let's look ahead to what we're going to be seeing over the weekend. We've got Cheltenham and we've also got Doncaster as well. We do have the Cotswolds Chase won by the likes of Frodon. Definitely red. The list for the Cotswolds Chase goes on. Many Clouds, a dual winner of this race as well. Now, Santini is very prominent in the market here, round about the 5-4 mark. Now, he's not actually been seen, has he, for a fair few months, in all fairness?
No, I'm looking forward to seeing him because we've talked a few times about this mystical form from Sandown, because it was much talked about at the time because he came back, he reappeared as this potential Gold Cup horse in a listed race at Sandown, and he made really hard work of it. Admittedly, there were some smart horses behind him, the likes of Now McGinty and Talk Is Cheap. But we haven't seen many of them since, so we haven't really known how strong that form is or will prove to be. But there's a lot of talk around this Santini. He was a very, very good novice last term. He was second in the RSA Chase. But to see him 5-4 for a or 7-4, whatever the price is for.
I would say I think that's been on the short side.
Yeah, very much so. You're very much taking a price on reputation there rather than what he's been able to show on the track. I think for him to live up to the reputation he's got and the price he's got for the Gold Cup, he's going to have to win this and win this really well. And I wouldn't be taking 5-4 about him to do that at the moment, considering who he's up against.
Well, it will go up against Bristol Demai, who we've not seen since he lost his Haydock unbeaten record, didn't he, in the Betfair Chase behind Lost in Translation. Yeah, there's a lot to like about Bristol. It wouldn't be for me though.
It's interesting. I think it's really interesting that he's here because, as you say, we've only seen him once so far, and he was beaten on his only start in the Betfair Chase. Now, that was a seismic result because nobody had ever got near him at Haydock Park. That was very much his home track, and he was beaten by Lost in Translation, who wasn't able to frank the form in the King George last time, but there was probably mitigating reasons behind that, and I don't think there was any shame in being beaten. He very much had a reputation for a long time as a horse who perhaps was at his best at Haydock and a lot better at Haydock than anywhere else, but he sort of burst that bubble when he was third in the Gold Cup last season. So he sort of comes here as very much a Grade 1 yardstick. I think there's pretenders to the throne in here that are trying to break into the top table. And Bristol Demai is a very, very good barometer with which to test yourself by. And I think he'll give him a good race, certainly.
There's also Delta Work in this as well at the time of recording. Of course, he comes into the race on the back of that win last time out in the Savills Chase.
He does, and it's interesting to see the differentiation in prices between Delta Work and Santini, because they were together in the RSA Chase. Santini was second, Delta Work was third, and arguably Delta Work has achieved more so far because he's a multiple Grade 1 winner now, 4-time Grade 1 winner. He was a 3-time winner over as a novice last season, and pretty much enjoyed the perfect novice campaign apart from the blot on his copy in the RSA. But he still ran really well that day. And it's interesting. He sort of hasn't got an awful lot of credit for what he's done so far because the Savills Chase form has been scrutinised and picked. But at the end of the day, he did beat the likes of Presenting Percy and Kemboy and Road to Respect, who are all bona fide Grade 1 horses. So perhaps he is a little bit big at 7-2, but I would sway on the side that I think he needs to back that up this time around.
Topville Ben for the Phil Kirby yard, who's having a great season. Of course, he won the Roland Merrick last time out. Now, he was also potentially going to turn up on Town Moor for the Skybet Chase. Phil said that he's still got an entry as it stands at the moment in the Cotswold. I think they're going to wait on the ground with him. But at the time of recording, he's 13-2. And obviously, his long-term aim is the big one in April, isn't it? The Grand National.
It is. It's sort of an ongoing debate, I think, between connections with Topville Ben, because they've mentioned the Grand National, and yet there's this lingering temptation to put him in the Gold Cup as well. So whether this will, if they put him in for the Cotswold Chase and he runs really well, maybe they'll be tempted to send him to Cheltenham. He's in an interesting position now, Topville Ben, because he's been a likeable staying chaser for a good while now, and Phil Kirby explained the key to him really taking that step to the next level is learning to settle in his races. He's not quite got there yet, but he was a much improved model last time out in the Roland Merrick. It showed. He won really, really well. And he's sort of now in this position where you're on too high of a mark really to be competitive in those staying handicaps. You've got to go for graded company. And, you know, this is the sort of logical kind of port of call for him. So it would be interesting if he turns up, or whether they decide to wrap him in cotton wool, so to say, and send him straight to April, Aintree in April.
Do actually count for the Emma Lavelle yard. He's around about the 7-1 mark. Of course, very impressive last time out in the Ladbrokes Trophy, formerly the Hennessy. And I think what's impressive about him is what was in behind him and what he actually beat that day.
Definitely. Maybe he's a bit underestimated in that respect, because he is a Ladbrokes Trophy winner, and that is traditionally a path to the top table, and a path to this race as well. It's been won by some really smart types over the last few years. We mentioned Many Clouds. He was a Hennessy winner, Ladbrokes Trophy winner, went on to win this race. I think the thing with the Rasher Counter is he needs to show that he's cut from the same cloth as those types of horses. He needs to prove that he's a good winner of the Ladbrokes Trophy. This is his opportunity to do so. But whether he is quite a Many Clouds, that'll be a big ask. And
just a quick word as well on Slate House before we look ahead to the Cleve.
Yeah, he's been excellent in the campaign, hasn't he? He'd probably be 4 out of 4 this season if he hadn't have fallen in the Bet Victor Gold Cup. Mm-hmm. I think it's really shrewd that the Tizzards have taken advantage of his novice status, because he's gone back into novice company as a bit of an unlikely type, because he's a lot more experienced than some of the other novices. He won the Grade 1 last time at Kempton, and you'd imagine that the RSA is on his radar. So, this is like a trial for him as well, because if he wins this, they might as well send him straight to the Gold Cup a year early. So we'll find out about Slate House a bit more. But yeah, he's a very good novice chaser, and it's not the last we'll see of him in this kind of company.
The Cleve Hurdle then, the Grade 2 over 3 miles on Saturday afternoon at Cheltenham. No surprise, Paisley Park, the red hot favourite here, odds on at 1-2 at the time of recording. I suppose with this race, Nick, it's a case of saying who finishes second behind Paisley Park.
Well, you know what, Bobby? I am very much a fan of If the Cap Fits. And you know what?
Can he beat Paisley Park, though?
I don't know. I'm really looking forward to this race on Saturday. I've been a huge fan of If the Cap Fits for a long time, but he's facing a rival who is the undisputed king of the staying division in Paisley Park. He's the one to beat. He's hardly put a hoof wrong so far. He's 6 from 6 since the beginning of last season. And it was a really pleasing reappearance at Newbury last time, beating Thistlecrack. He swerved the long walk at Ascot, as did the Cap Fits on the count of the ground. And, who he's facing would absolutely shore him up as the king of the division and an absolute banker for Cheltenham. So if he is beaten, it will make the stayers even more fascinating. Whereas I think if he wins, he wraps the division up. But at 6-4 on, I'd be inclined to take him on definitely on Saturday.
Well, Apple's Jade at the time of recording, she's currently entered. Now she's 5-1. The argument with her is that if she's on song, right, and she performs to her absolute best, which we have seen time and time again, then surely, that puts her with a leading chance and could potentially put it up to Paisley Park.
Yeah, definitely.
But she would have to be at the top of her game.
Yes, she would, but that's the really interesting thing with Apples Jade is that we know what she's capable of on her day. I always think back to that performance at Aintree a few years ago when she won by something stupid like 40-odd lengths. And, it's been a really bizarre 12 months for Apples Jade because if you go back 12 months ago when she won the Irish Champion Hurdle, she was untouchable. She won all these grade ones on the bounce and everything was coming together for a Champion Hurdle bid at Cheltenham. Mm-hmm. And for one reason or another, more often than not, she's failed to fire on the Cotswolds. And ever since, it's been really hard work for her. And to the point that her connections were considering retiring her. Yeah. It was only the victory at Leopardstown over Christmas, which was very much a vintage Apples Jade performance, straight out from the front, cleared a long way clear, never saw a rival. That was her back to her best. Now, that came over 3 miles. Maybe it is now that she's a 7-year-old that this is her game. Maybe the shorter chips are a bit too sharp for her, and that this is where she needs to be seen to best effect. But I still think that even if she's at her best, it will take some doing to beat Paisley Park, and if the cap fits, and she's probably booked into the third for me. So
that's your tricast then, yeah. Paisley Park wins if the cap fits second and Apples Jade third, so she turn up. And obviously consider...
No, I think if the cap fits, I think he's got a serious chance on Saturday. I really do. I think he was so game to... He's the pretender to the throne in my eyes. He was so game at Aintree to win the Liverpool Hurdle. I think the key around this one is his brilliant attitude. He's so versatile. He's shown that he stays the trip. He won on reappearance over the Ascot Hurdle, over an inadequate trip. And you know what? This is the sort of race where if it turns into a bit of a scrap and a dogfight, I would not like to go up against if the cap fits. He just strikes me as one of the most tremendously game horses in training, which is everything that Lamy Surge isn't. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. I mean, I will happily be totally wrong, and Paisley Park will wrap up the division on Saturday, and that'll be marvellous in itself. But I'm really fancying a race on Saturday, and I hope it's a 3-way tussle because it'll be a great spectacle.
You're really looking forward to this, aren't you?
I am. It's going to be. I think this will be the race of the day on Saturday. I'm lucky enough to go to Cheltenham on Saturday. Really looking forward to the Cleve. I think it could be a really, really good renewal.
Yeah, hopefully it will not disappoint. Well, thank you to everybody that's tuned in to the Jumps Racing podcast here in association with horseracing.net. Don't forget, we will be giving away free tickets as well. So make sure you do check out our microsite for more information. And I believe we might be giving away a certain Cheltenham tickets next week. So do stay with us. And don't forget the question this week. We want interaction for you. Who should replace Nick Russ as the chief executive of the BHA? Don't forget to subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to the audio, it's always available on Apple Music, on SoundCloud, and on Spotify as well. But from myself and Nick, we wish you all a very good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, whenever you may be checking out this podcast. And we will be back next week.